Good morning, everybody. We will call to order the meeting of the Finance Administration Committee, February 5th. First order of business, we need to amend the agenda. We have added several things, the investment information, tentative budget, calendar, lobbying onto this agenda. I just need a motion.
So move.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approved the agenda. We'll go ahead and get started. Mr. DeCleva, thank you for being here.
Sure.
We met last week and just had some additional questions from the committee that we wanted to make sure that we had all the information covered before we went forward with the recommendation to the full board. So thank you for being here. I'll go ahead and open it up to the committee. I've got some questions, but if y'all want to go ahead and get started.
Okay, I had last time, I was not here when the audit was voted on and done, and you presented it. I think it was one of the first meetings I was here.
Yes, ma'am.
I do understand the general accounting things, but I suppose one of my questions, I like for someone to express an opinion or provide an assurance or something of that on the information they're doing. And when I was reading your proposal, it was saying that you really weren't getting that enough information to be able to do those two things. Is that correct?
Basically, and I think we had this discussion previously at the last Finance Committee meeting, a general financial statement audit encompasses a review and evaluation of the controls in order to express an opinion on the financial statements themselves, which is the amounts and disclosures, and not on the actual internal control structure.
Right.
That would be a whole different engagement other than an audit of just the basic financial statements. Most or all public companies are required to have an audit of their internal controls that are on the stock exchange in accordance with the SEC regulations.
Mm-hmm.
But that's normally outside of the scope of a for-profit or a governmental type agency.
Okay.
And just to make sure everybody understands, you were provided with all the information, that all of the income, the checks that are written, all of the financial information you have access to in order to complete your audit.
Oh, yes, sir. We would not be able to express a
Right.
Unmodified, clean opinion on the statements without all that information.
And do y'all provide the services that you're talking about over and above? I mean, to do a complete and total assessment, internal controls, and
The expression of an opinion on the internal control structure is not something that our firm does. That's more specialized, and it's really one of the big four firms would do that: Price, Waterhouse, Coopers, and Deloitte. Those type firms engage in that. Really is a specialty.
I know in some businesses where there are different revenue centers, profit centers, an auditor may kind of revolve around and pick a certain area to pay more attention to, just to make sure that there's a little more scrutiny. I think here we're in a little bit different situation because of the revenues and where they all come and all, but is there anything else that we could or should be looking at, in your opinion, in terms of not only what's required, but in best practices and making sure that we're being as prudent and efficient as possible in doing our duties?
Well, I mean, I'd just like to clarify that, the authority's controls are reviewed as part of the audit. We have, and we annually update our understanding of the controls that are in place for the various operating areas of the authority, and we also do some limited testing to ensure that the controls are in place and are operating. That level of evaluation is just not enough to be able to express an opinion
Right.
on the controls.
Right.
Have you done work with closure and post-closure with any other business than ours?
No, ma'am. This is our only landfill client.
Okay.
And I think we determined that y'all had provided this service for 17 years.
Since 1996.
96. And, and is there some special requirements for providing governmental audits? Is there anything that y'all do that would be different? Any special certification, education?
In order to do a governmental audit, that there's additional CPE requirements that are required annually. We have to take classes that are specific to the government environment. We would typically do an annual update for any changes in the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and various other, specialty type classes, be it landfills or closure, post-closure, any new items that would become, be effective and coming down the pipe. We would, attend classes for that. In addition, our firm is subject to external peer review every 3 years. We're audited. The auditors are audited. And as part of that, a cross-section of the firm's engagements are reviewed, and a governmental engagement is required to be selected as part of that process.
Sure.
David, with all the gas fees and all that stuff set up, is that kind of driving some of the firms out of the governmental accounting review auditing business?
Yeah, I think that it's, increasingly complex. It's hard for a smaller firm to be proficient in all aspects of regular auditing, governmental auditing, tax. I think one of the advantages of our firm is it's a large local firm. We're close at hand, but we have, approximately 45 employees, and various partners are specialized in different areas. I essentially specialize in auditing, in addition, governmental and nonprofit entities, which allows me to devote a substantial portion of my time to just that area.
And I think that one of your comments in the minutes was not getting a lot of people to respond.
Right.
And that question, I think, is the kind of the answer.
Right.
Even talking with Ann Wright with the county is, and she's been in this stuff a long time, and she says it's governmental auditing just not as profitable now as it has been, and people just, I guess the auditors cuss Gatsby as much as I have. Because it is a pain, and it's put a bunch of us, just like this insurance and stuff. It's just put a lot of public companies kind of at odds with what they're supposed to report.
And that would make sense if there were special requirements that some firms just chose not to respond. Do you actually yourself work on the audit along with a staff, or just you, or is there?
I'm in charge and review and approve the engagement. In addition to that, I'm on site while the audit is being performed. I will come out and do some reviews of controls and inquiries, and review what my staff's doing while they're out here to be able to address anything that would come up if something were to come up at that point in time.
And how many staff members is that?
Normally it's me and one other staff member
Okay.
on site.
Okay. Thank you.
Have you generally performed audits where you would have enough information that you would give an opinion and assurance? What is the difference between what you're doing now and what that would entail?
In regards to the internal controls?
I suppose.
Well,
Start
I've
with that.
never done an audit of internal controls and
Okay.
express an opinion on internal controls.
Really? Okay.
I think that's something that the national firms would do.
Would have to do, and it would be a lot bigger deal than what we're discussing right now. A lot different.
In order to express that opinion, a lot more work would have to be performed in order to do that, in addition to what would be done to complete the audit. It would be a separate audit.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask the question that everybody's wondering. What would that cost? Just a swag?
To get a national firm to come and do that, I would think it would be, and I'm just shooting from the hip, $20,000. I mean, that'd be my, based on nothing other than a gut feeling of what it would take to do that.
I wouldn't, you could get one of
And
the
that's
big
just-
four.
I thought it'd be
to come
higher.
to town.
That's just
Yeah, I mean, it could
I
be
was
higher.
thinking more 50
I
myself.
that's what I
Yeah.
would say too. I would think too, for town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
He's being conservative.
very conservative. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to tell us that you think we may need to do, or things that you've done in the past or would want to do in the future that would,
Well, I'd just like to say that, we value this relationship. We've been involved for a number of years. And over that period of time, we've been able to have the authority staff assist us, more every year, which has helped us to, be able to keep costs steady despite inflation. If there's a new area that we need to test, we'll develop what kind of schedules we need, and they've always been able to provide that to us, which has helped the efficiencies in the audit. Anything that, we've come across that, maybe enhancements has always been implemented by the authority, and it's always been a good relationship, and I think things have always gone smooth with the audit, and I would anticipate that continuing.
You've always gotten the cooperation that you needed in order to complete your duties from management and staff. That
Yes, sir, that's never been an issue.
good.
And what they really do, there's a little conference room down right around the corner from Mike's office, and for 3 or 4 weeks, whatever it is, they're there, they're in there, and
Boxes and boxes of paper.
doing and looking and asking, and it's somewhat different here than our experience downtown. And let me give you some of those differences downtown.
Talking to Mike.
Downtown, if they're looking at a magistrate's office, you might have a magistrate that hadn't done a deposit in 2 months. Well, then they had to go out there and pretty much get all that stuff straightened out. And in this day and time, I mean, it's computerized, and the scale that's the cash register, and that's where the money comes, and the payments and everything. So, and as I told Jan, at a TV station, I'm not scared of the manager. I'm scared of that little new spindly-legged reporter dragging that camera around, wanting to break Watergate again. And they've always got a little new girl sitting in there poring over these figures, looking, and they auditors, they looking. And we kind of hold our breath till we get the report that everything's good, everything's fine.
Cause some of the staff is stressed out. Susie does the depreciation, and depreciation is probably one of the hardest things of auditing that you do, is to get it right and not mess up on your equipment depreciation, and she just gets all maxed out. She just stresses out before it's over with because she wants to be right, and so, but that's with any audit, so.
well, everybody makes mistakes. That's normal. Do you generally tell the areas you will audit before you come in or after you come in?
Well, there's a general audit schedule that will look at all areas every year. And if you look at the proposal, there was a laundry list of items that were
I mean, this is a whole
request
gamut of stuff.
annually, but on a cyclical basis, we'll spend more time in one area versus another.
Another.
Y'all do any work outside of South Carolina?
Audit work?
Audit work out of South Carolina?
Some, yes, sir.
Are there different requirements for the state of South Carolina versus North Carolina or Georgia that, especially governmental related, that,
Not many. There's been a big push for mobility with the licensing over the last 5 years. Essentially, if you're complying with your home state, that pretty much allows you to practice in any state in the country now. At one point, that wasn't the case. They're trying to make it more like a driver's license. If you can drive in South Carolina, you can drive in North Carolina. But the requirements across the borders are pretty much the same now.
okay.
But each state has different requirements, and you have to be familiar with those, or are they the same now?
They're pretty much the same. The Government Accountability Office, the GAO, is really the national entity that drives governmental auditing standards and requirements.
One thing I had, David, that I know was brought up at our last meeting was about the, some of the records and things that you take back from the Solid Waste Authority. That question was kind of brought up on, you know, how those are maintained there as far as, you know, people having access to them. What kind of records do you take back from here back to your office?
Well, we don't take any source documents at all. What we're provided with is reconciliations, and the way the process works is if we look at a source document, we note identifying characteristics to be able to re-perform it if necessary, which is a documentation requirement. And we would just make some notation that we inspected invoice or inspected check, whatever number, and that's what's retained in our audit documentation.
Okay.
We would never take a source document and bring those back to our office.
Any other questions for Mr. DeCleva? Okay, well, we appreciate your time. We just wanted to kind of make sure that we had all the information in order to make an informed decision and go back to the full board and what our recommendation would be. But we certainly appreciate the service over the last number of years and the job that y'all have done and keeping us out of trouble and being thorough in all of your activities. So,
We appreciate the
okay,
opportunity.
good.
Thank
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
Our next one's here at 12, so
12,
you got some
okay.
time to
Let's
take
go.
up some other issues
Yep.
or eat, whichever one you want to do.
Good. Is Roddy coming for the investment? Or
No,
is
he
that-
had to be in a class in Columbia,
Okay.
but we have some information that we can go over with
So
y'all.
we can go ahead and do that? Okay, all right. Well, let's just move then to the next item on the agenda, the investment information.
Jan, come right back in. Jan, you got the investment stuff?
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move through the agenda while we're waiting on the next. Is Mr. Green himself coming, or is
Yes,
there?
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right.
What I've got there, as I got in touch with Roddy Dickinson at the county, and he was not able to come today. He has a mandatory meeting in Columbia that he had to attend. So I kind of addressed with him some of the questions we had. First being the assessment on the fee, on a fee assessment that they're going to, they'll have imposed, whatever. And so this was the contract that Roddy signed with Wells Fargo. That 8 basis points is an annual fee. And from what I understand, what they will do is take all of the investments, include the county's, school district, airport, ours as well, and they'll assess that fee, like I said, on that total amount, on the fair market value at the end of the month. And then what they'll do is they'll send out a statement to the county, and they'll break it out as to what funds were ours, what funds were the county's, that type of thing. The fee will be taken off strictly right off of our interest rate as far as that goes. We won't actually get a bill for
Right.
it. But when I talked to the lady from Wells Fargo this morning, she kind of explained it to me. You know, like I said, it is an annual fee. I took a look at kind of what our investments were at the end of January. Keep in mind, that was just a partial month. We had originally invested $10 million. The end of January, it was showing a market value of $10,007,726. Based on that 0.08%, as an annualized fee, our fee for the month would have been around $667. So we would have seen an increase in our funds of around $7,060 just for a partial month. I think they didn't start investing until maybe the middle of January. For the month of December, our investments were $7,869. So you're talking about
The old way.
for an entire month. So just, you're seeing about the same amount for a partial month that we did for an entire month. So you can plan on that just about, hopefully doubling. Our interest should be doubling each month at a minimum. And that's just with a partial month, that's just partial of our money as well. They've only invested 10 million of our money. We still have quite a bit still in CDs and in the local government pool that they haven't even invested yet, where the 7,000 that I've given you for the month of December was on all of our investments. So, we anticipate seeing quite an increase in that.
Not only, I'm
I'm sorry,
sorry,
Mr. Chair.
but not only a partial month, but a very volatile partial month.
Exactly.
That I'm sure would be taken into account.
Yeah, can you give us those figures again?
Sure. Here, if you want me to, I'll pass that down to you. I've got it kind of broken out down there on the bottom, what the market value was. So like I said, and they said too, like I said, Roddy said they can bring somebody in from Wells Fargo if you need to discuss some of that any further. I've also printed out for you, I know one of the other things that you had mentioned was how these investments were secured. And so I went in and I printed out a report. This thing is extremely lengthy. I've got a bunch of pages here, but at least it does show on there. Now I just printed out the one for you to look at. If you see right in the middle, it shows what they've invested in and how it's insured. That's something that I can print out for you every month. I can go right online and print it out. Like I said, and I can hopefully condense it so it's not such a great big report. Just to give you some information, like I said, most of them are government bonds and things, like I said, that they've got there invested, so they are secured.
Well, it ought to be pretty easy to track month by month to know that, now for a full month of February, at the end of the month, we'll be able to look back at last February, same amount on the investments, and be able to track pretty closely on how we're doing, and with the comfort level that everything is protected and there's not a chance that it goes away. I think
Exactly.
what Ms.
I talked with
Richards was asking.
Angie at the county just a little while ago, and she mentioned that the county's road money has been being invested in First Citizens Bank in the same way for some time. And she said, and Barry Spivey and them have been super excited, she said, about the money that they have earned, the interest they have earned off of that money. She said that's why they're really excited about moving their funds as well into this program, because the return they've seen has been excellent.
I had a pretty lengthy conversation with Barry yesterday, Barry Spivey, the county, and again last night at the council meeting, had talked to him a little bit. And he said they did a lot of due diligence on this thing over the last year or so, looking at him and Ann Wright, and had beat it to death, and really was what she said was excited about it, that they could make some money because they have over $200 million that they've really not made a lot off of. And they're really excited about this and the calculation that it's going to be.
From the authority standpoint, what's the schedule on CDs maturing, and, when will that 10 million become 15 or 20 or whatever?
Well, we have to, first one thing, and I was in the meeting with Wells Fargo, is they said you got to identify when you need money. Like we got the closure that's about 7 million.
Right.
So you can't invest, this only works with long-term 3 to 5 year investments.
Right.
So if you don't can't invest it in 3 to 5 years, if you need some of that money, you really can't put it in this type of funding mechanism or investing, because it does not, we can't do it long-term. So we haven't identified what monies we need short-term, long-term, but it has to be a minimum of 3 years.
Okay. But I'm assuming they have insurance
Yes.
on this.
Well, that's on one of the last, I think it's right on the last line.
Last
Tells
one.
you where that what is securing it.
Okay.
It's required by state law and federal law that it has to be
To
secured.
be secured, okay.
And we've got several CDs throughout the year that will be maturing, as well as we still have some money maintained in the local government pool, which is our money market. So as those CDs mature, and like I said, I don't have the schedule of when they come due, but they're throughout the year, probably by, I'm going to say maybe by November, everything will be transferred over, except for what's in the local government pool.
So what's the target number then, from 10 million to what understanding that we will have to plan for cash needed, but what's the number, the target number that 10 will go to?
It'll go to our designated, which is, I think, 35 million.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was my question. Well, I think it's definitely a wise move and not risky in any manner, but certainly benefits the citizens and helps build those accounts in a manner that's prudent and helps us long-term.
And I spoke to Ann this morning also, and she said they were pleasantly surprised on the road money. And they had that money just sitting there, wasn't gonna be able to use it. And I'm sure if Ann Wright and Barry Spivey has poured over it,
Sure.
it has been everything in the world.
Stone unturned and, yeah.
Well,
I'm
they-
just glad to see we're getting more money.
Absolutely.
those
That-
monies.
yeah.
I agree.
Without any more risk.
Right.
That-
That's
right.
a ton of money.
And the counties just went into Wells Fargo. Before that was Bank of America, and this is, probably in the last 12 months?
I think we're on, it's been a little over a year.
Yeah, or so they went to Wells Fargo, and then they started developing this plan that they've worked on for years. Barry and them's worked on them with to try to get more investment money.
If the interest will go back to 10%, we'd be doing okay.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
And I told Jan this would be a report that I feel sure y'all would like to see in the board meeting, so it'd be easy enough to do.
Yeah, I think tracking month by month would be very informative, just to
think it would.
show what kind of benefits are being received from this, so. Well, I appreciate the information, because I think we were thinking that we would get some of that information on the front end and understand what was gonna happen maybe before it happened, but obviously the decisions have been made, and it looks like a lot of research has been done, and the right decision's been made, and looks like it's well-positioned to do well for us, so.
You just let me know if there's any other information you need or want. I'd be more than happy to get it for you.
Thank you.
Any other
Appreciate it.
questions about that
No.
investment information? Thank you, Jan.
You're
Appreciate that.
welcome.
Budget calendar.
Item next, the budget calendar.
I've got, like I said, a tentative budget calendar. I just, as a matter of fact, before we came in here, sent out the operating budget to all the staff to begin working on, and hoping to have it back, like I said, by March 3rd. I've got, like I said, in yellow are kind of some of the dates that we'll need to kind of, have the board fill in. We've done I think last year might have been the first year, we did kind of a pre-budget workshop with the board, just to get some input from them if there was anything new that you wanted for us to take a look at, anything you wanted us to change or do differently for next year, just to have, some conversation before we get too involved in the budget process, if there's anything we need to look at differently.
I would propose we do that again. I think that was a good exercise.
I agree. And like I said, I don't know if it's something the finance committee wants to do, if we want to do it as a full board.
I'd like for the whole board to have an opportunity to do the workshop.
Okay, well, we'll work on trying to maybe get a date set up in the next couple weeks, so that way we can, before we
Great.
get too finished with the operating budget, we can work on that.
Perfect.
Okay, and then maybe when we do that, we could set up a date for the actual budget workshop. Like I said, I've got April in there, and like I said, we can kind of set that up from there.
That's what it was last year in April?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we typically have to have our budget tentative numbers to the county by the 1st of May.
Do you usually have it before? I know their workshop is April 10th and 11th.
I think we had ours like the 1st of April last year, so I don't know. I don't know if we normally have presented something. Usually we present it to INR, is
Okay,
where it usually goes to INR committee.
And we usually do that in May.
okay.
Yeah, I've got that there.
Now, the county does it because they have to put it with their budget for their budget information to start getting the readings on it. The staff gets it, when I say the county, the
Okay.
staff gets it. But we'll do once the board's completed with it, we will go to INR. We did take it to INR in the past. I can remember we took it one time, and before the board was completed, and they sent it back. Said, we don't want to look at it, y'all done with it. So,
But ours will not be on the 10th and 11th.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
So we don't need to schedule anything today. You'll let us know for the next couple of weeks about the workshop?
Right.
As soon as we can get those dates,
Great.
we can plug them in.
Sure.
and that's going to be determined, basically when the board can do it.
Right. Okay. Very good. Any questions about the calendar? Any other comments from staff? Okay. On the lobbying, let me just say first, You know, I'm disappointed that C&D was removed from flow control. I think that we had a lot of discussion about that, and I felt like it should have stayed in. It didn't, it went out, but now it's done. And the vote has taken place, and the decision's been made, and now it's up to us to move forward. In my opinion, I think we need a presence in Columbia. I think our responsibility, first at this committee and at the full board, is to make sure that we're getting a value for what we're paying for, and to make sure that this isn't, in anybody's opinion, just a flow control issue. I think there are a lot of other things that may come up that we may need to be aware of, and I think having somebody in Columbia will be beneficial to give us a heads up, that we don't get caught off guard. But I also think there's an opportunity to have a collaborative effort with county council, because I think our objectives are the same. And if there's a way for us to work with council and make sure that, and it may be an issue in Columbia that's less about solid waste or the authority, but more about another issue that would affect citizens of Horry County, then the county's going to be interested in it. So I think there's a way for us to collaborate, and I hope we can get to that point. And I think some discussions have taken place that I'm anxious to hear about. So I'll just turn it over, let staff kick it off with the lobbying issue.
Thank you, sir. We've got a handout here. And we did, Mike and I went down yesterday and sat and talked with, another one. We went down and sat down with Mark Lazarus, chairman, and the administrator, and talked about what we were wanting to do, that we had talked about it at the board meeting. And we got some very positive feedback from them.
Good.
To the sense that they wanted us to go ahead and get them a resolution endorsing the lobbying efforts, to where there would be no arguing and fussing and finger pointing later on.
Right.
So I felt real good about those conversations yesterday.
Great.
Now, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in Columbia, not only with flow control, that's one that we've been really involved in, but they're looking at changing a lot of the South Carolina management plan. And this is that document that I've got a couple of copies of that you can certainly take a look at. And this has to do with streamlining DHEC regulations, and they can change one word in a regulation and will affect stuff way down the line. So we think we need to keep an eye on that, and that's for some of y'all that want to some Sunday afternoon reading. So that's one thing that we will be looking at. And then this handout that I gave you, page 9 and 10, there's some of the regulatory review stuff. Page 11 through 20 is the task force review stuff. So these changes are being modified by the DHEC staff and the governor to streamline things for businesses that would make it easier, I guess. But we've really got to keep an eye on those things, to what effect it would have on us. So once I started really putting this list together is when we got into the Beam associate stuff, and you can see on page 1 through 3 of this handout is we'll have 2 contracts. We've got 2 budget years that we're facing. One is from now through the end of June. We have money in this budget year for that. And really, you know, if you want to be hardline, we could just say, by God, we got the money in there, we just gonna go ahead and do it, but we haven't taken that approach. We think that we need to take the approach with the county and advise them what we're doing and advise y'all what they're doing. So one of these contracts is February through June, and the second one is from July through October. So we're looking at 9 months that we will be paying for these services, and we've listed the services that they will be looking at. And once we started putting this list of stuff together on what they would be responsible for doing and keeping an eye on, then it takes a lot of looking and a lot of listening to do that. So, and I think on, if you will look at page 2 of the first one, we're looking at
31,000.
the installments is $6,200 per installment. So the first group through June would be $31,000. And all of it total together
55.
is $55,000 to get us through the end of October.
And does that, I'm sorry, I don't know, but when the sessions actually run, does that run concurrent? Is that how this was?
It runs they're working year-round. I mean, some committees will meet and some will, doing different things. But this is pretty much from January through October is pretty much.
Yeah,
when
what
they're there.
typically happens is you got the session when everybody's there, which is January, sometime in January. This year it started about January 14th, 15th. And it'll go through, they have actual active sessions through about the 1st of June, first week of June. Normally it's usually over with. And then they got committee meetings and stuff to deal with the budget and other issues that come up during, basically through the month of June. And then you have committee meetings and you have people start preparing bills to be pre-filed for the next year. And there'll be a lot of those this year because this will be a new session. All bills that's not passed by June 30th of this year dies. And so this coming year, which is an election year also, which normally creates a lot of pre-filed bills in November and December. So they'll start getting those together, and you kind of have people to watch those while they're being generated, because they'll end up on a staff's desk in Columbia during the summer months, and it'll start going that way. None of them will be debated or talked about and stuff, but they generate a lot of stuff during that period of time. And I think what we were so focused on flow control, we didn't really focus on or pay attention to, but during the past 3 or 4 years, we worked, Beams helped work on the electronics bill and several other bills that was up there that would have affected, but we were so focused on flow control, that's what we always talked about. It wasn't about that Beam and Associates was working on the electronics bill and keeping an eye on what was happening with that, and some of the other bills over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's not something new that he would be doing. He has done that in the past, but he was doing more of it because of flow control. And flow control, this week, they did take the amendment off of the flow control, the electronics bill. They changed some dates over at the House side. It is now for the Senate for ratification. That was done yesterday. So maybe the electronic bill will get changed, but we got, you get some things that are moving around like that. So, but the point I think I'm trying to make is he wasn't just working on flow control all these 3 or 4 years. There was other bills, and I think we need to continue that type of stuff.
Through the first 6 months of the year, how much of that lobbying budget have we exhausted?
First 6 months of this year?
Well, from July 1 till now.
Done. Other than what you see in there, it was $170,000 budgeted. We have $50,000 set aside for consulting, which we've used half of that through December. We would have used half of that, so $25,000. Probably about $30,000 of that money's gone. We took $10,000.
And that's to?
A contract we have in place with Beam and Associates and had for 5 years that will end in October of this coming year. That's for consulting related to DHEC, coastal council, those kind of things, wetlands issues. Beam does he just don't do lobbying, he does a lot of coastal things, like he helps City Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach do those canals up there. If you got a wall, seawall you want to put up, he does some of that too. So, you know, if we needed him for some ponds and stuff that we had here, so, you know, we were able to use him on that, and that's the kind of stuff he helps us with.
And is that a retainer type
It's a
relationship?
flat- That is a flat rate. We pay him no more, no less.
Right,
It's just a monthly thing through 5 years.
and then he's at your disposal when you need him, and,
If
okay.
we have an issue going on with DHEC, that we having problems getting something done, we'll call him and say, look here, we got this issue, can you maneuver the things through Columbia to make it move
That
faster?
money's gonna be spent. I mean, we're under contract with that 50,000, but
Through October of next year.
October.
And that contract ends at that point in time. October
5-year.
The 5-year contract ends October 31st, 2014. And that's $4,617 a month.
Okay, but that's separate from the actual lobbying.
That's
that you
separate from the
budgeted.
advertising. Now, we had $120,000 set in there for lobbying this year. We took about 10,000 of it out and transferred it to another fund to buy an air conditioner for the finance staff side of the building that didn't have, it blew up. We did not have it budgeted, so we had to transfer some money.
Can lobby for a new.
Yeah, had to
air
lobby for a new air
conditioning unit.
conditioner. When you got all them women hot on that other
Right.
side, or cold, it wasn't they came in and it was like 60 degrees and 50 degrees in their office. It didn't take long to start trying to find some money somewhere. So we went to that account to try to get the money to do it with. So we have done that out of it, so there's about $110,000 left.
And we're seeing a recommendation to spend about half of that.
Well, it'll actually only be 31,000 of that.
That's right, through the end of the
Yes,
calendar, that's right, the fiscal year.
Of the 110,000, we're proposing to use, that's left, you know,
Right.
proposing to use 31,000 of it.
Okay.
Which I make a motion, we go ahead and accept.
Have a motion to accept the recommendations from staff?
Can I ask a question? first?
Certainly.
When you had your meeting yesterday with the chairman, did you discuss this lobbying and so forth with him?
Oh, yeah.
Did there seem to be any problem, or
Not one
there would
bit.
be any problem with this at
They-
all, and working with council and notifying them and?
Matter of fact, the chairman recommended that we go ahead and draft up a resolution for their approval.
Okay.
And I
And
think,
then Mike.
and I think they're talking about sending that resolution to Harold Worley's
The
committee.
admin committee meeting.
Admin committee to discuss it in the admin committee. And I'm sure, you know, it's still got to go to our full board. So we'll be going everywhere we can go when the door opens. But that was their position,
Okay.
and it sounded great to me. And I think one of the board members asked him if he felt that good about it, would he be willing to pay any, and he said no. So, but, you know, when you talk about other bills that would be more on the county side, e-waste doesn't cost us anything. They just said it can't go in a landfill.
Mm-hmm.
So we keeping it out of the landfill. So that e-waste bill is costing the county money to dispose of it. And this has been 2 years that it's been kind of held up. And Sonny and all those people have not had to ante up yet. But once it's approved there, and it's gone to the Senate now with the correct dates in it, then the county will then have some assistance statewide on who helps dispose of this stuff. So it's those type bills that we will hear about too, and get in touch with stormwater and all those type things that's in this stuff. And this thing, they could be some changes made real quick nobody knows about,
Yeah.
be far reaching.
Well, you know, one of the bills in there, in the governor's task force stuff that's being recommended by DHEC, is some kind of, with these places that's throughout the state, like in Charleston, and the one up on 905 that proposed to be recycling C&D and stacked it up on the facility and filled a building up in Charleston and just left it. that these facilities have some kind of financial assurance. That's one of the things that they, DHEC and the task force came up with, that they want to recommend a bill be amended. And if you, as you're reading through that task force thing, when you get a chance, it'll tell you about how they recommended and the issues that came out during that process, as that review throughout the state. Those kind of things, Beam will be keeping an eye on to see how they're moving along.
And I think if your county's been affected by it, like that thing on 905, then the county should have the opportunity to be aware of it, that they could go to the committee and say, yeah, this happened to us and to our community out there. And of course, I guess we looked out in a sense out there that it wasn't the taxpayer that had to clean it up, but I think the bank ended up with the pile of stuff. But it's happening, and we want to make sure we're aware of it and we're able to do the right thing about it. And after looking at what we're going to require them to take a look at, and it's kind of like, I want to get it just as reasonable as we can. But it's kind of like if you get a price on cutting your yard and somebody says, I can do it for $2. Well, you wasting $2 and then it ain't going to do it. And you could lowball this thing and not get what you need to get covered in the process. But I feel good about it.
And what typically happens is if they find an issue going out and it's coming up at a committee, they'll call, say this issue's coming up, this is being drafted, we've been told that these things are coming through and it's going to show up on the committee, but you won't never know it's in there, and then all of a sudden the committee agenda comes out and it's on the committee. Gives you time to get up there and get prepared to get there, and you go there, and you see Myrtle Beach up there all the time, you see North Myrtle Beach up there all the time, because their lobbyist has called them and said, we got an issue, you need to come up here and be able to speak on it. And that's where we're at. But Ms. Creech, we showed this agreement to the chairman, county council.
That, I just wanted to make sure that they were aware and understood and everybody's enlightened. That is a daunting list, and I definitely think we need to be aware of everything that's going on in that.
We have a motion on the floor. Second. Just before we vote, I just wanted to say I appreciate, first of all, y'all going and talking to the chairman. I think that was very important. And we have the money budgeted, and regardless of where the money comes from, I think having a collaborative effort is essential to us, working with council. Everything that impacts the authority and the landfill also impacts Horry County and county council and the citizens of Horry County. So I think that I think council agrees that we need representation. Obviously, y'all met with the chairman and the administrator, and it protects us. And I think from our standpoint, just wanting to make sure that we're getting a value and that the money is being spent wisely, which I appreciate y'all doing the work that you did. And I think it looks like it's a valuable tool for us to stay on top of things and to make sure things don't get happen without us knowing about it. So I appreciate the efforts, and I feel good about going forward. And
well, and I think we all are speaking from the heart, even at the board meeting the other night, that this is the law of the land.
Right.
And by God, it's the law, and we're gonna make it work.
Right.
And we're gonna do all we can do. And I told them that again yesterday, that we want to get unhooked from this tar baby.
Right.
That we need to move on. We don't need to be arguing and fighting anymore. But I did tell him too that communication was a two-way street.
Sure.
And we found out about that workshop tomorrow, Saturday morning, in the press that went to the press. And then we got hustling around trying to find out what that was. So, and he agrees with that.
Good.
So we feel good about the meeting, and we've been every time they let us in the door.
Sure.
And he's said that he thinks that is still the thing we need to do. either INR or, I don't know how we got in INR, we were in admin one time and then we back to INR. But wherever they want us to go, we will go and we'll report, no less than quarterly.
Good. Well, everybody knows what the guidelines are now. We know the rules by which we need to play, and it's up to us to respond accordingly. So, but again, I appreciate that. So, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And we
We'll-
can go ahead and prepare a resolution to send
Look-
from this committee
Let's do that.
to the next committee.
Right.
And then by that time,
To
we'll.
the board.
To the full board.
Right. And we'll have, at the next board meeting, the recommendation from this committee about the lobbying efforts and the contract and agreement that we
And
discussed.
the actual resolution that to go to the committee and go to council will be done before it comes back to the board
Right, okay.
because of timing issues.
Sure.
I mean, council meeting, is going to be actually on I think the next one's 13th or, no, not 13th, but somewhere about a week before we have ours, so.
Right, 20th, yeah. Okay, good. Anything else on the lobbying efforts? Thank y'all for the work, and I appreciate that, and thanks for the discussion. I think we're ready now for the next accounting firm. Green. Good morning. How are you? Eves?
Thank you.
Eames, thank you. Welcome, appreciate y'all being here. Thank you. My name's Lance Thompson. I'm the chairman of the Finance Administration Committee and board member, Solid Waste Authority. Ms. Creech, Reverend Coakley, this is the committee that we met last week and actually reviewed the proposals and wanted to meet again this week and ask you to come down just to be able to ask some questions and get the full information that we need to have to make a recommendation to the full board. So we appreciate you being here today, and we'll just have some questions for you, and anything else you want to add, then we're happy to hear anything that you want to add.
Great.
Okay, great.
One thing that I found of interest in your proposal, it said, in addition, as stated in your proposal, with your client's data extraction and analysis of computer-assisted audit techniques, that you can look at 100% of the transactions and/or balance accounts if needed and confirm 100% of those transactions with outside customers and vendors. Can you kind of explain that to me a little bit?
Well, I use data extraction software. I normally take all your reports, et cetera, take all your data and kind of put it in my computer system and combine it, dates, whatever I want to do with it, summarize it, print out confirmations, et cetera. So I try to go through the computer instead of around it, if you will. I try to do everything kind of in a paperless environment. I don't really want paper. We scan it in. I'll print all, I guess, ledgers, reports to PDFs, and I can import them. And,
Do you feel that gives you more of the data, comparing that with the vendors?
yes, well, I can summarize it. You can see anomalies. You can see things you normally can't see unless you combine them. I mean, it's really, you can go back. I can go back as far as years if I need to, and import them and combine them and just see what people's.
Excuse me, we're recording, so if you can't speak into the microphone.
But yes, I mean, if I can import it, I can combine things and see it much better. Pull them samples, just things I want to look at, what looks strange, et cetera.
Do you feel with that amount of data, you can give opinions on different things that are going on?
Yes, in some situations, yes. I mean, it really depends what I guess what the question may or may not be. But things that look strange, yes. I mean, that's really what I'm trying to find, and in the past, I've caught quite a few things that stand out that way, that I never would have.
Well, I have seen in some of the just regular Gatsby audits and everything, sometimes they say I can't get enough information to render an opinion or assurance or whatever. Do you think you would have enough data using this process to do that?
I would say yes. I would say actually I can get more than I can doing OA just by pen and paper. So
Okay,
if I have to go back to pen and paper, that's great too. But I can get more the other way. So
okay. Thank you.
But I guess what we're trying to get at is, there's kind of the standard audit, the
Correct,
standard
correct.
governmental audit. And is that what you're proposing, or is there something that, I think the 100% of, kind of raised the question about something being over and above what a normal governmental audit would be, and you providing more of an opinion than you would under normal circumstances, I guess is the question.
Well, it would be the normal audit,
Right.
normal opinion, just the way I get my information.
Right.
I don't want the pen and paper. I'd rather import all the files and do my thing
Right,
with the computer, get my data and samples, et cetera.
right.
I think
So-
it pertains more to the efficiency of the audit.
Right, on your end.
Yes.
Right.
Because they like to say, if you import it, you can look at 100%. It's kind of the accounting way of looking at it instead of pen and paper. They're just more samples,
Right.
generally speaking, so.
In our books, we have closure and post-closure
Correct.
that is in reference to the landfill. Have you ever done any audits?
Yes, Robinson County, one of most counties in North Carolina, landfill is part of the county itself, in the county audit. So yes, Robinson County is one of the big ones.
Okay.
yeah.
So you feel very comfortable doing that? Okay. The other thing was, I think, with phone calls, you had an amount in here. Was it a definite amount, or would we know how many phone calls, how many times we might need to talk with you,
My
and how
fee-
that would be
my fees,
charged?
that's it, that's all inclusive. Normally I give finance my cell phone, call me, everybody calls me all the time, no charge unless I got to come around and work an extra 2 weeks or something, but we'll discuss that. But normal phone calls, actually, I want you to call me on my cell phone, get an answer the question, be done with it.
Okay.
And I think there were some other South Carolina governmental agencies that y'all were working with. Is that, if I
Yes,
recall correctly?
City of Greer.
Greer.
I've done others in South Carolina, but it's kind of, I guess, South Carolina, I want South Carolina firms, generally speaking. It's hard to get across the line, but.
Right.
But pretty much everything in North Carolina, like I say, we've done them for years.
And the question came up earlier about the requirements by the state. Is it pretty similar what the state of South Carolina versus state of North Carolina requires in terms of the audit, or what
Well,
you're
What I would say,
providing?
well, I would say the audit is the same for both. That's according to AICPA and GASB as far as what it looks, et cetera. I would say North Carolina is probably worse. It's got to be approved by Raleigh, when South Carolina don't, so, but it's still the same audit.
Mm-hmm.
So should be no change. As far as the audit's concerned, the only difference, North Carolina's got a note for their retirement plan, and South Carolina's got their own note for their state employee retirement system. That's a standard note, though. So, but they're basically the same.
And how long have y'all been in business?
I've been with Mr. Douglas. He started in 1941 in Lumberton.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with them for the past 20 years myself. But they've done everything from southeastern North Carolina, you name it, from hospitals to whatever. And this past year, I kind of left and went out on my own and got office in Carolina Beach and Whiteville. And I'm still doing all the governmentals that I was doing. So
Mm-hmm.
I probably do 10 or 15 towns, Robinson County, some various others. So
And under normal circumstances, what staff size would come in and actually perform the audit on site?
probably me and him, coming out for
Okay.
about a week.
Okay.
Or depending on what else it would take. I normally like to draft my financials here, so then when I come and start and I leave, I lay a financial when I leave.
Follow up on a question Ms. Creek had, talking about the CATS program. We can look at 100% of the transactions in the next paragraph. We scan, I guess you scan all the original documents.
Yes, I bring my scanner. I don't want copies and nothing. I
All
scan
that
originals.
scanning is part of this price.
Well, I mean, scanning of what I might need to do the audit. I don't want them making copies of checks and invoices. I'll just, contracts or whatever. I'll just scan it in. They don't have to make no copies. I just let them scan them. But like I say, I do everything paperless. You can print it to a PDF and give it to me or let me scan it in. Instead of just making copies and then getting it to me and me scanning it in.
But scanning is.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yes.
that's
in
total
this
fee. That's
price.
total fee.
Can I ask, just like 2014, you've got a range here. What does that mean?
Normally just based on time, but the max will not go over the total there. That's kind of what I figured the range would be. So,
And how much time do you think, how many hours total do you think it would take you you two?
Here probably a week, and I might spend a week or so before getting things in order, and a few days after clean up my files. It takes a right good bit on my end, but
2 weeks,
mhm.
80 hours times 2, is that what you're saying?
I'd say probably between 160 and 200 hours.
Probably.
But that would,
And that's not including the, I guess, the help that we'd have at the office drafting the financial and actually
Bank copies.
making copies and.
But if I'm talking about that's it as far as fee, there is no other fee to me.
okay, that's your final figure. It's
Yeah.
not really a range. That's inclusive. in
Right,
that.
that's
Okay.
right.
Yes, sir.
Would typically fall under your category of additional services that you talk about bill of standards, hourly rate?
To be honest, let's say we caught someone stealing, and you want us to come in and spend 2 weeks, seeing what all did happen. That's pretty much what that, or any other, something, I don't know what you may need help on. Something that's gonna take a lot of time. I mean, talking a week or 2 weeks. You have to call me, or have me come down maybe once in a while, for an hour or two, that probably ain't gonna get charged.
Typically,
that-
a service that's outside of the scope of the annual audit.
And what do you see would be outside of the scope of the annual audit?
Kind of just like what he was talking about, if you had certain areas that you wanted specifically looked into, like if we gave you a recommendation and you said, okay, well, maybe we'll go back and revisit a certain account or certain balance.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if, in the proposal, you had, one place you said you took a sample of the material and then the 100%, what's the difference?
Well, I'll take the sample out to 100%. I mean, I'll actually,
So you're gonna get 100% of what records you wanna take,
yeah,
And then,
and then only a sampling you will take out of that and review?
correct.
and plus anything that might look strange, Sometimes you never know.
I think in that, just to clear it up, we have the ability to look at 100% of all transactions, but
That's not part of this.
we're going to
proposal.
plan our audit to be a little bit more efficient, to look at a sample of that 100%.
And so, are you saying that looking at 100% is not part of the audit, it's just a sampling of the total record package? Is that right, or, I'm not trying to put words, just trying to understand.
I think so. Again, we're going to be able to look at 100%, going to have the ability to look at all transactions if need be, but we'll typically have a sample based on risk and other factors for that account.
So when you do confirmations, you do a sampling of confirmations, not every vendor.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
Yes.
Okay. Would you think because you take the 100% that something would pop out?
Yes, I mean, sometimes I can summarize it and just think it looks strange.
Right, okay.
It could be from checks, out your computer system, let's say it's got a date that was 2001, why? You're in 2012, don't look at that check.
Okay. Okay.
And whatever,
Yes, sir.
And talking about Robeson County and their closure and post-closure,
Mhm.
how do you figure that in that county? How you figure those accounts?
Well, in their case, they, outside of their closure study that they have every year, the engineers, when we come up with what percentage, et cetera, that we need to accrue or not accrue. In fact, theirs was actually went down over what they had previously accrued, so.
Yeah, some people in our state went down and we can't figure out why.
So, they don't, I guess that's up to the engineers, their study. It's really more or less based on that study.
Yeah, we rely a lot on that study as far as to generate what kind of numbers you need to have on your
Okay.
your balance sheet.
But now, in their case, they changed engineering firms. One was higher and the other new one's lower, so.
Well, sometimes it pays off, I guess.
How long have y'all done that one for Robeson County?
7, 8 years, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, Robertson's probably one of the bigger ones in North Carolina.
Who owns,
Landfill.
who
As far as
owns,
the county, especially as a county too, so.
who runs that landfill? Who owns the landfill?
Who owns it or who?
Yeah.
Well, the county owns it, but Steve Smith, I think Steve Smith was, he just retired back in December, so,
The county runs it? you
It's
run
owned and operated by the county.
county. That's pretty much the case in North Carolina, most of them are county.
Is it located in Lumberton?
St. Paul's.
How old? Yeah, how old's that landfill? When was that open?
Been there probably since, I'd say late nineties, early 2000s.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Graduated from that high school and a long time ago.
St. Paul?
Yeah,
Oh, well.
Okay.
St. Paul's, 1979.
St. Paul's struggled, that town struggled for a long time financially.
Yes.
Burlington Industries, you
Yeah,
know,
indeed.
when the textile business suffered.
They
That's
had it
interesting.
tough.
Yeah.
It's off to the right on 95.
Now, off of 20, over near 95?
I go down Parker 10 Mile Road and making a few cuts back in there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Is there anything else you'd like to ask us or tell us about your services?
Well, we'll range CPA from us. I've been doing government audits I've been doing for 25 years. Like I say, the old firm, been doing since 1941 in North Carolina. I live about a mile from Green Sea. I live on the line, pretty much, so.
You live in the Jam?
You Cherry Grove, you about a mile from my house.
Okay. I know where you at now.
Cherry Grove Baptist Church, we turn back towards Saragordo, where I live.
Very
So,
good.
and my mother's family from Hemingway, so.
But you've worked with the other firm, but you just started your
I've
federal
been back in-
income?
yes,
And
and-
so you've been doing this for about a year for yourself, I guess?
We're correct. And about, like I say, about all my towns, pretty much all of them kind of went with me. I was our government audit manager, if you will. So.
First time I run up on somebody from Cherry Grove, I said, well, how you get to your house? And I was going to one up above Ocean Drive, and he really had me confused on where he was going.
The only other thing I'd like to ask is the information that you will be compiling. Your computers, you have security and all of that, and you don't have any idea that any of this information would be
No.
hacked or removed or,
Well, I try not to get, I really want social security numbers if I can help it, and credit card info. I don't want none of that, so
okay.
ain't nothing.
Good. Any other questions? Staff? Jan? Any other questions? Okay. Well, we appreciate your time in coming down today. We, just had those few questions and trying to get all the information we need in order to make an informed decision. So very impressed with your background and work, and so appreciate your time.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thanks for having
Good.
us.
Thank you
Pleasure
so
meeting
much.
y'all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If Chadburn gonna make it,
I doubt it. Ain't much in Columbus, I think, will make it no more.
Chadburn, it's sad to go through that town. It really is.
Yeah, there's a lot of chaplains said, I think Fairmont will make it.
They try.
They do the audit there, so it don't.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to deal with, administrator, what's his name, from Tabor City? Is he still doing Fairmont?
Leonard.
Al
Yeah,
Leonard.
Al Leonard.
He was the acting manager, I guess he still is, for Fair Bluff and Tabor City.
And Broadway, about 4 or 5 of them up there, he's administrator for.
They do it part-time, a few hours a week.
Yeah.
They're them traveling preachers.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good meeting
Y'all have a
you.
safe trip.
Al Leonard. He was gonna run for the House or something one time, wasn't he?
He's gonna run for RC Soldier.
There you go.
Have you checked, we talked about you checking the references and checking things and all that, or do you have anything else to report on that?
I spoke with the Kelly Blue from Robeson County, and she said, they're very nice gentlemen, easy to work with. They'd been doing their audit, she said, for about 5 years, she thought. And like I said, it was all positive. She was very nice. I left a message for the lady in Sunset Beach. I have not heard back from her. So Robinson County was the one I wanted, since I knew they worked with the landfills. And like I said, she said they've been very happy with them.
Okay.
Is there anything that, since the proposals were received or that you heard today, that would change your recommendation to the committee on which direction we should go?
Well, one thing I wanted to mention is when you talked about the 100%, understand that we do, that with Smith Sap, it's the same aspect. we send them 100% of our accounts. They take a sampling as well, and they get 100% of our accounts receivable accounts and pick and choose what confirmations. So when they say 100%, I want it to be fair that it is equal on both sides. They're
Yeah,
both
that's what I was-
looking at 100% of our accounts.
Right, and that's what I was trying to get at, that it's the standard governmental audit.
Correct.
The way that they internally do things may be a little different in, you know, what may benefit them if they think so, but, what they do for us would essentially be apples to apples.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, sir, I mean, like I said, I think both of them seem to be very positive, well-represented firms. Like I said, I have a lot of confidence in security, of course, I think with Smith's App. I think one of the things that I look for, or I try to, is to work with someone that I feel confident in their work as well, someone that I know that will represent the Solid Waste Authority, that I feel comfortable in their work and their presentation, that's well-known in the community, I think is important and very well-respected. I think is important as a representative of the Solid Waste Authority. Like I said, in my recommendation, I think would still be to go with Smith's App. But like I said, that is a decision of the board and the committee.
I'm encouraged that we have options, and it's nice that what we looked at, you know, I'm impressed with this group. I think in all things being equal, I think we've talked about the necessity to deal with local businesses if everything's the same.
Right.
But it's nice to kind of double check and have another option to look at, and I think both would probably do a very good job. It may come down to relationships and the business that's local and that we know. You know, we can check references and we can talk to these folks, but until we actually get in bed with them, we're not going to know. And so I think there is something to be said with the track record that we've had with Smith's App and the services they've provided over the time. But I am glad that we had somebody to compare to, and glad we did what we did today to get some additional questions answered and to know that they do have experience with a landfill and with governmental audits. And so, any comments from the committee members?
Well, I agree that the people you've used and you're confident with them, I think that's great. I was impressed with these two gentlemen. I think they're a little bit less expensive. They have told us everything they have is inclusive. And after 17 years, there's something to be said also for having a fresh eyes and different one look at something like that. And all of that being the same, I would really like to look at them to do that, but I would prefer instead of a 3-year contract for it to be 1. And that's just my thought.
Did the 3-year contract come from us or them?
It came from us.
We asked them to bid on a 3-year contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, he pretty much said a not to exceed number of 15.5 unless there was something that would be highly unusual that we would ask them to get further involved in.
And I would assume that the regular one, if they brought something out and we'd asked them to look at it, they would charge to do something separate as well.
I would make that same assumption.
Reverend Coakley, comments?
I think the major concern for me is whether staff is still willing to stick with its recommendation of Smith's App or the other after hearing both. I'd like to hear what their full recommendation is at this point. Which of the two you recommend?
Well, like I said, I guess because of my confidence with Smith's App, I use them as much as, as the organization does, as a sounding board when I have questions, concerns. For instance, is this new investment schedule that we're going with. It's all new to me. It's somebody that I need to discuss with. I have complete confidence in them. Not that I wouldn't in the other by any means, but like I said, I think they're very thorough with what they do. I think they're very well respected within the community, which I think is important, not only, like I said, for the organization. Like I said, I'm very confident in their work and feel confident that I can utilize them as I need to. My recommendation would still be, to go with Smith Sapp for that reason.
The difference we're talking about in price would be, if it were a 3-year comparison, would be $1,000 on the front end down to $500 on year 3. I guess $1,750 and $500 if we were doing a 3-year comparison.
$2,250, I believe, total, in savings over 3 years.
Yes, yeah. Well, yes, yeah. Yeah, his not to exceed number.
They're going to the max, they ain't going to that low end
Right.
of that scale.
Right.
And I don't know why they didn't just put that high end in there to start with.
Unlike y'all, I didn't feel as comfortable with them as y'all did.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you know, I think that, and like I said, I've got a couple other calls in, they just didn't call us back. I wanted to talk to Donna, because I know Donna from Sunset. I want to get a feel from her, and now that I know they know Al Leonard, I'd definitely like to talk to Al, see what his input is. I think being in business a year is probably, I know he's been doing it for a long time, but he's been in business for a year. That was the only thing I had was, and the board's got a way out. They do, y'all the one makes the final decision. They work for y'all, but it's that thing. And then I see Mr. Creech's thing. Maybe it's good to have a fresh set of eyes, look at things once in a while. But that was my concern. If we had a firm that had been in business for a long period of time and it was well seated, and not that he hadn't been doing it a long time. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but it actually just started the business approximately a year ago.
The question is
Yes.
how long the rest of the staff has been doing it.
I don't know.
He's been doing it that long, but there's the rest of the staff. How long they've been doing it, how long they've been working together in that mix as well.
Sure. Yeah, his experience, you're correct, is one thing versus the length of time he's had his own business, which, you don't know about the resources or financial position of his company versus the one he came from. But it's obvious he's got experience, and again, I'm glad we had an opportunity to explore and see. I think if it were me, after going through the exercise, I'd want to go back and kind of like Reverend Coakley, and if the staff feels like that, I don't think there's enough of a difference in the money that would cause me to say, well, let's get a fresh set of eyes on it at this point in time with the, not only from his standpoint, but, we've got a transition too in that department, and not saying anything about the experience level there, but, that's something to me to be considered with the continuity from the auditor side in dealing with staff here, so. But that's just my opinion.
Did they say how many people's in this firm now that they've broken off?
He didn't say. My understanding, just from talking with the lady from Robinson County, it's just him and the other gentleman. And they have a lady that works
In the
the
office that's gonna put the book together?
Yes, sir.
Does that mean we have one different staff recommendation?
I've discovered that the least expensive is not always the best.
Oh, yeah, we got away
learned it the
from
hard
bid
way.
best bid in the county years ago.
Hard way.
That's true.
And as
For sure.
Jan said, I think we'll live with whatever the board chooses, and, we got our own thing, but we'll work with them just hard as we will anybody else, but,
Okay, the wishes of the committee?
I make a motion we stay with Smith Sapp.
Second.
Motion to second to stay with Smith Sapp and follow the recommendations from staff to do it. Now, is that recommendation to have a 3-year contract with Smith Sapp, or is that something, he's kept his price the same for all 3 years. So would that be to honor the contract as written for a 3-year All right. All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Well, we'll take back to the full board then the recommendation from our committee that we go back with Smith Sap. And I think it was a good exercise to go through. And yeah, and now, 3 years from now, with 3 more years under their belt, we might be looking at something different. And, it's another good opportunity, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that as we out moving around and talking to people, if you know of audit firms that are actually interested, if we can get, we sent 11 out and we only got 2 that may be interested in it, please let us know so we can make a list for next time that we can get it to.
Well, I asked Jan to please put Elliott Davis on the list. I know they weren't on the list, but it did go out as a public announcement too. And I'd like for them to be included on receiving a package in the future.
Yeah, and we'd like the full board to do that because we, for us to get more than just 2 to choose from, we may could have had a different option here today, but
Sure.
We need to try to get aware of those firms because it is hard to find audit firms for governmental entities. It's tough. I've worked with a couple of the small towns trying to find people, and they just couldn't get nobody to get them.
Right.
It was tough to find them.
Jan, you'll let both parties know the decision's been made and,
Once it's reached approval by the board, yes, sir.
all right, okay. All righty, any other discussion about the audit and the accounting firm? Any other business at all from the agenda for the committee? How about from staff?
Thanks for the work.
This was really very efficient with that long agenda. That was, I'd blocked off all afternoon thinking we were gonna be over here, so. That was really good.
You can take up some of my meetings after.
Okay,
these.
all right, I'll go with you.
Do
Yeah,
that.
I'll go with you.
I knew Ms. Creech had an afternoon full, so.
Yeah. Well, good.
We're
Well, if
gon-
there's,
We're going to be
Sorry.
using y'all a lot here lately. Looks like a lot of meetings over the next few months, so.
that's good.
We just need to get y'all straightened out, and then we won't have to do that next month, will we?
I don't-
You're working on it.
Ms. Creech, you've been trying to straighten me out for a long time.
That
You-
hadn't worked. Now it might be better.
Believe you got the upper hand
That's
now.
right.
I want to thank you again for the work and meeting with council chair and also administrator and making sure that we're working collaboratively on that effort. And I think everybody will feel good about that, we're all on a united front. We're all on the same team. We got the same objectives. If we can get those things accomplished and working together, I'd much rather have that happen than any type of adversarial situation. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Absolutely. I appreciate both of
Yeah.
y'all doing that, and we do
Means a
need
lot.
to keep them abreast of what we're doing and make sure all this runs smoothly.
Good. If there's no further business, I'll accept the motion for adjournment. All righty. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Good job.
Dude.
That's where my pen went.